All right, we're recording.
All right. So before we jump into the pitch, let me give you a background of how I know Rob Walker. When I lived on the East Coast, I co-founded the Philadelphia Film and Animation Festival. So a team of 21 screeners and I would review thousands of submissions, and I couldn't get this one project out of my head, Victorian Cutout Theater. It was this series of witty Monty Python-esque shorts made from public domain old-timey illustrations. And I just thought it was so unique, so brilliant that I had to endorse it and then also write to the creator, Rob, to see what the hell he was smoking over there in Colorado when he came up with it.
Well, it's Colorado, so probably pot. Actually, no, it's pure unadulterated anxiety and depression up here in the old noggin. After Steph reached out, I fell down the rabbit hole of her work. I learned that I'd been actually watching it for a long time. I learned about her community service and work at the festival, as well as the fact that she was behind Mystery Science Theater 3000 and The Angry Video Game Nerd, two shows I watched religiously. I had to meet this fellow nerdy creative weirdo in person.
And when we met up, it was a freaking love fest. Rob's my brother from another mother. So we've been writing hilarious esoteric bullshit together ever since.
And speaking of hilarious esoteric bullshit, we're here today to talk to you about Eldritch Manor, which is essentially the spiritual sister of Victorian cutout theater. Do you remember the animated Edward Gorey introduction from PBS's Mystery? No? No one watches TV? That's fine. It's like an entire series of that. Eldritch Manor is a lightly serialized animated series about a charming young charlatan named Harold Snork who is roped into running a haunted Victorian hotel when he inherits it from his uncle, Admiral Snork, who happens to be one of the ghosts haunting the hotel. Harold recruits Catherine Lord, an uptight paranormal investigator, to help get to the bottom of the spooky occurrences and hopefully win a lofty prize sponsored by a magician Harry Houdini to prove that spirits do in fact exist. Unfortunately, Harold must also rely on his staff, Willowbean, a mad scientist, Cowell, a sniveling concierge, Hawkins, a drunken groundskeeper, and Simone, the chef and secret assassin. Meanwhile, the bellhop automaton, Murderbot 9000, keeps trying to do the one thing he does best. Hint, it's not the dishes. Their infighting, along with Harold's infuriating ego, would make even the simplest visit to the hotel a calamity. And at the Eldritch Manor, there's no such thing as a simple visit.
So tonally, it's Faulty Towers meets Archer with the style of Edward Gorey. It's an episodic series crafted for prime time animation audiences. So it's a dark comedy with humor that goes as high as it goes low, appealing to broad audiences who are fans of like genre content, everything from horror to steampunk, mystery to sci-fi, and of course, comedy. Our series has an iconic look that is as memorable as it is cosplayable. So, although the central series will be timeless, we will also have commercial breaks of topical multimedia extensions of like cut paper Victorian style, like Victorian cutout theater shorts. These cheap to produce shorts will capitalize on keywords within the social media zeitgeist to promote the show, to get the kids off of the TikTok or the clip clop or whatever.
In our pilot, Harold discovers that the manor is a complete shithole. Literally. There are holes everywhere covered in owl excrement. He's also very disappointed to discover that the manor is filled with all sorts of degenerates, mostly because he prefers to be the only degenerate in the room. I mean, sure, as an eternal bachelor, Harold is intrigued when he meets the sexy but mad scientist named Willowbean and the mysterious cook slash international assassin named Simone, but he's quite had enough when he runs into an automaton named Murderbot 9000 who, well, would you want to hang out with anything named Murderbot?
I kind of want to hang out with Murderbot.
Steph, we've talked about this. Your weird relationship with Tom Servo is one thing, but you got to stop having it out with rando robots. Having an Android phone is bad enough.
I know people with iPhones judge me because my text bubbles are a different color.
Oh, that's kind of sad. Luckily, since we take place in the Victorian era, there are no iPhones, Androids, or security cameras, which is why our fearless leader, Harold, has no qualms about burning down the entire manor for the insurance money. But just as he's about to mercilessly commit another crime, his late uncle, Admiral Snork, appears in the form of a ghost and reveals that there's a treasure beyond anyone's wildest dreams hidden on the grounds. Only one problem. The admiral was mysteriously murdered, so his ghost can't remember where the treasure was hidden. Oh, and the manor, being a bit of an eldritch horror itself, as advertised, has sort of a MC Escher quality to it, which means it constantly grows, changes, shrieks, etc., etc.
Etc., etc.
Harold resolves to let the manor survive another day, just until he finds the treasure. Besides, it's free housing, which he is in dire need of, since he was run out of his previous town by screaming villagers with pointy and flamey things. Maybe it's time to take a breather from all the charlataning.
Maybe he could leave his life of crime and go legit, perhaps clean up the unsettling amount of bat carcasses around the manor, slap a coat of paint on the old girl, and call it a quaint B&B?
Nah, that would require work and redeeming qualities, of which Harold has none.
Ah, life of crime it is. That's actually probably why Catherine Lord is hot on Harold's pursuit.
Right? Old cat. And by old, I mean the ancient age of 30, which is essentially elderly for Victorian ladies. She is a smart but uptight paranormal investigator. An encounter with a carnivorous plant in her youth left her with an ability to sense the supernatural. Her bizarre abilities and inferior gender saw her drummed out of Scotland Yard despite having been right about her cases nearly every time. She is independently wealthy but wants to use her paranormal expertise to solve crimes. Scotland Yard offers to give her her job back if she brings in the notorious Harold Snork.
But more than justice, Kat has got something to prove, and that is that the Eldritch Manor is haunted. Sure, there's also a $5,000 contest to prove that spirits do indeed exist.
Which is a real contest, by the way, that was once sponsored by Harry Houdini and Scientific American and is still active today over 100 years later.
And when the degenerates at the manor find out about the contest, they all try to find ways to prove that spirits exist, the money, and to boost tourism at the failing hotel.
Much to the chagrin of Harold, who very much wants to keep all of this under wraps so he can find the treasure, get the prize money, and then burn down the manor for the insurance, keeping everything for himself. All he wants to do is retire and live out the rest of his days at a nice brothel.
You can never have too many hookers, you know?
Actually, I think there is such a thing as too many hookers. Antibiotics are still a new and slightly frowned upon technology in this era.
Right. The clap can be a sticky wicket. Hey, should we talk about the other degenerates? I mean, our series regulars.
I mean, we've already used massive amounts of profanity and talked about venereal diseases with an assortment of strangers in a business meeting. So why not go whole hog on this rodeo?
All right, then let's dive into our fearless leader, Harold. He is 25 and he sees himself as handsome, really a clever man of action, but was recently driven out from London by an angry mob who discovered that his miracle cures were nothing more than perfumed cat urine. Lacking the competence to match his confidence, he overcompensates in a manner both transparent and charming. So he's like every, good guy but terrible boss in history. He regularly evades questions, shifts blames, and forgets which lies he has told to whom. So the only thing that really gets him to overcome his laziness is greed. And okay, so maybe the occasional lust, but even then, sometimes it's just more efficient to make sweet, sweet love to a grapefruit, or as he calls them, bachelor's friends, than try to understand the endless caterwauling of the fairer sex.
While Kat tends to drive the freak of the week stories with her paranormal investigation, Harold's uncle, the ghost of Admiral Gerald Snork, drives the slowly unraveling mystery of the Eldritch Manor itself and its alleged treasures. The former owner of the manor, Snork, is the very picture of Victorian naval officer, strong, stubborn, and stiff upper-lipped. Now, Admiral Snork haunts the crumbling cemetery on the outer grounds of Eldritch Manor. Friendly to a fault, the Admiral was always the loudest singer at the party and the first to buy a round of drinks. His gregariousness was often confused for idiocy, and many attempted to take advantage only to find themselves on the receiving ends of his fists. Harold uses this to his advantage, and lucky for him, the Admiral's fists are mostly kind of withered and transparent now. Upon retiring from the Navy, he became a successful industrialist building Snork's Corks, a factory specializing in bung plugging devices for every culinary or medical need. Nowadays, he does his best to help Harold with the manor, but the afterlife has left him with foggy memories and hilarious regrets. He's one ghost that has so much unfinished business that it seems impossible for him to move on to the next realm. But why would he? He'd rather stick around and hang out with his best mates, Harold and Hawkins. They are his best mates, right?
Nope, very wrong, dear Snork. Poor old chum.
Don't feel too bad for him, though. Almost everyone in the Victorian era was absolutely a nightmare.
Yeah, that's true. Rob, do you think that 100 years from now, people will think that we're all nightmares?
Of course, yes. And speaking of absolute freak shows, let's jump to the Prince of Spiders himself, the concierge at Eldritch Manor, Archibald Cowell, 45. He fancies himself important, dutiful, and handsome, but is really corrupt, cowardly, and misogynistic. He's a real piece of shit. Admiral Snork hired him as a concierge at the Eldritch Manor after the previous concierge wandered into the sea. I mean, who among us hasn't wandered into the sea? He takes great pride in his position and, out of self preservation, willfully ignores all mysterious activity. To Cal, every debate is a personal affront, and he maintains a combative relationship with his staff, thrusting unsolicited personal advice upon them at all times. The exception is his new boss, Harold, for whom he feels it is his duty to mold in his own image in order to curry favor.
Curry flavor.
Now, you know that's not what I meant.
I know, I'm really hungry.
Okay, we can get lunch after this.
Okay, so I guess that gives me a deliciously and elegant segue into talking about a former assassin and current chef at the Eldritch Manor, Simone, who's 25. She is a mysterious French woman with no last name who is fair of skin but dark of heart. Crushingly serious, she will cut through the ensemble's bullshit with her biting wit and aubergine guillotine. Raised on the streets of Paris, Simone worked in food prep, martial arts, and theater before falling in love with Le Frown, a network of spies and criminals who run the Paris underworld, disguised obviously as mimes. When Simone botched the assassination of the Emperor of Calico, she was forced into hiding. So she showed up in the kitchen of the Eldritch Manor one day and never left. Short on ingredients, she is often forced into the role of Iron Chef Victorian edition. But I gotta admit, her rat goulash is surprisingly succulent.
It's really good.
It is delicious. Now she lives in constant fear that one of her sad clown former compatriots will end her life. So, hyper vigilant, she will use whimsical holiday cookie cutters as throwing stars should someone enter her domain without permission. A chameleon and master of disguise, she can go from sexy chef to sexy potted plant in 2.5 seconds.
Then there's kind of mad scientist and inventor Professor Emily Willowbean, 28, the enthusiastic but incompetent genius operating from the hotel's attic. She serves as the hotel's resident fixitologist, dealing with bad plumbing and pneumatic tubes while also developing her life's work, a cure for mortality. Helpful and optimistic, even under duress, Willowbean uses the strange events at the manor to both test her inventions and mask their side effects. Interested in can I, but not should I questions, she rarely presents her hypothesis to her fellow residents prior to testing her theories. She is shunned in the scientific community for her continued interest in the debunked field of female sexual pleasure. Boyoyoyoyoing. Also, for her ill-fated concept for a chain restaurant of also for her ill-fated concept for a chain of ape-owned restaurants. Sorry.
It's really hibachi. It's really hibachi,
Yeah,
Rob.
for a chain of ape-owned and operated hibachi restaurants.
Nothing could possibly
nailed it.
go wrong. Yeah. We'll also feature Admiral Snork's former first mate, Hawkins, who's 60, a weather-beaten sailor, rough in manner and appearance. Loyal to the end, Hawkins was forced into retirement for strangling Charles Darwin's prized capuchin monkey. We are not very good to monkeys and apes in this show. The Admiral has no choice but to give Hawkins the job of groundskeeper at his hotel. But Hawkins does little beyond charting maps from his ramshackle hut. He drinks heavily to escape the estate's lurking terrors, especially the persistent call of the obelisk behind his shack that invades his dreams nightly, haunting him with pesky requests like, "Kill everyone in the hotel and please read my new screenplay." He despises being landlocked, but has nowhere to go, having been banned from all portside pubs and taverns for chasing too many a milky-eyed barmaid. He often sends Harold into town to procure him bottles of mutiny rum and hand-etched erotica. His only companion in his shack are a rusty harpoon named Agatha and the locket of a mermaid he once fell in love with.
Last but not least, we have Murderbot 9000, who, unlike lovable Bender from Futurama, is far too dignified to have any kind of snappy catchphrase, which means that he'll probably end up with the most amount of them. Murderbot serves the Eldritch Manor as the Bellbot, in charge of baggage, guest services, and hedgehog taxidermy. His calm, even tone is lined with unsettling double entendres, which no one seems to notice. In truth, Murderbot was sent to the Eldritch Manor by one of Admiral Snork's former shipmates to look for the mysterious treasure and remove anyone who stands in his way. As such, he has mapped every secret hallway and door on the grounds, enabling him to move about quickly and also to escape when he needs some soliloquy time to ruminate on his misfortune. Unbeknownst to his coworkers, his murderous mentality is held in check by a small rosary-shaped remorse diode programmed to administer him pain when he acts violently. He fills the void in his soul by passionately singing opera when no one is around.
When our eccentric ensemble combines their limited resources, eclectic and sometimes disturbing skills, and delightfully absurd personalities, they create a dysfunctional work family under one crumbling, leaky, very cursed roof. So, how these characters irritate each other will drive the comedy of our episodes. So, like, Willowbean has no filter, which always makes Cowell uncomfortable, but absolutely delights Harold. The ghost of Admiral Snork is romantically interested in Kat, who herself prefers the company of the women in her lesbian erotica books that she hides in her garter. Simone is mistrustful of anyone who isn't Murderbot, and Murderbot, well, everyone else is a little creeped out by Murderbot.
We'll see them all primarily at the Eldritch Manor, which is a character unto itself in a location, a formerly grandiose hotel on a hilltop overlooking the quaint hamlet of Glory Hole. The Eldritch Manor is a dilapidated collection of secrets and barely hidden horrors. Everyone in Glory Hole knows that the staff are eccentrics and criminals who whisper of a dark secret and curse on the manor, one of which attracts unpleasant entities from vampires to ancient sea gods to the Irish. To make matters worse, the cemetery behind the manor is haunted by ghosts of everyone who is buried there, and a sort of magnet to all things spooky. From horny vampires to people on vacation, from a time portal to Wisconsin, go Packers, the Eldritch Manor is equally helped and hurt by all of its guests, residents, and intruders.
The first season will revolve around the Freak of the Week episodes, like when the hotel hosts a masquerade ball in order to get a vampire laid, or when a group of satanic suffragettes open a portal to another dimension.
And by the way, we wrote the pilot for this show. It's done, and it's a great read. I highly recommend it.
Are we biased because we wrote it?
Hell yes.
Right. Well, okay. Throughout the first season, we get to know these characters through these absurd scenarios, but also unravel the mystery of who killed Admiral Snork and where the money might be hidden within the manor. But just as Harold is about to achieve his dreams at the end of season one, Kat will finally have enough evidence to drag him kicking and screaming to Scotland Yard. After almost going to jail in the merry old town of London because of his disastrous lawyer, in the end, Murderbot will defend him. And of course, Harold will be released on the technicality of Kat being diagnosed with hysteria, so all of her evidence is inadmissible. Left with nowhere else to go, Kat will be forced to return to the mansion as a sexy maid, ruining the day she met Harold. That's when she hatches a plan to get Harold extradited from England, which helps us launch into season two, where Harold and his merry band of misfits end up in a different haunted hotel in the American Wild West, where they profoundly do not fit in.
Well, except for Murderbot. He looks amazing in a cowboy hat.
He does. And of course, they'll all come screaming back to England with new plans to make the Eldritch Manor into a bona fide vacation spot, only to fail over and over due to laziness, greed, and eternally humping owls.
Although characters will learn new things, like Simone's ties to a mime based assassins guild, our characters will be perpetually trapped in their shitty situations. They will never really learn, grow, or change unless a witch puts a curse on them to learn, grow, and change, but it'll usually get resolved by the end of each episode.
Oh man, I love being able to watch things out of order. I have no attention span.
What was that you just said?
I can't remember.
Me neither. That's not great. Well, the real point of us creating this show isn't because we're trying to fill an industry mandate, fill another genre bucket, or chase a trend.
Well, except with the keywording. That's gimmicky as hell, but that's why it's called show business.
Right. I'll leave that social media stuff to you guys. I'm still sending things via pneumatic tube.
Is that why you never text me back?
No, it's because you have a filthy Android.
Right.
Honestly, life is short, and I like to surround myself with genuinely good human beings who are smart, funny, and work hard. Steph and I make each other laugh. We both have an unhealthy obsession with Halloween, old-timey bullshit, and telling social change stories the way they did in Star Trek by hiding it under a genre lens to make it more palatable. We understand fandom because we're fans, but between us, we also have hundreds of awards, several TV shows sold, plays produced, viral videos, articles, and Kickstarter world record breaking project.
But at the end of the day, we just want to be together after being torn apart for so long. Shit, I hate being sincere because I'm used to being sarcastic, but seriously, that's the real reason we're here. It sounds hokey as hell, but Eldritch Manor is a story about frenemies as told by two close friends. And I sincerely hope that you all enjoy it. We love it so much that we're going to find a way to get this made, network or not, because we think that other people will enjoy it. But we wanted to bring it to you specifically today because we think it fits perfectly in your late night animation block, and it would just be an honor to be a part of your network. So if you think it's neat, well then neat, let's talk more soon. But in the meantime, we just appreciate your time and for listening. Thank you.
Thank you.